Hey guys, welcome back to the MLS Updater with me, Mike Rice. Today we're going to be doing a bit of a transfer special, coming from a particular region in Europe, and I'm glad to have Steve Wyss with me here today. Steve, how are you doing?
Mike, I'm doing well. Well, thanks. You've got my name pronunciation spot on, which some people don't get. Yeah, I know you're very excited about the start of MLS coming up next month. And I've seen some of your videos there previewing certain teams. So it's all go, isn't it, up in North America soon?
Yeah, the off season in full swing. A lot of panic from some teams as they're like building their rosters for the end of February. So yeah, there's been lots going on at the moment. Can you let people know a bit about yourself as well as your podcast as to why we're going to be looking at this sort of Scandinavian region today?
Well, I am a football and betting analyst. So I specialize in obviously soccer betting across the globe, but in particular, certain regions that I have very extra knowledge about. For example, French football, English football, and also Nordic football. So that's why I'm on this show because of
Yep.
the league, certainly, especially Norway and Sweden in particular. And I'm
Yes.
not I'm not too bad with my Finnish knowledge either. Yeah, it's and I'm part of a podcast called the Nordic Football Podcast, which is where you've I think found me on
That's right.
a podcast. We're kind of in an off season with our podcast at the moment because there's no matches on. The matches don't start till April.
Of
Well,
course.
the league matches anyway. So we're on a little bit of a winter break, if you want to call it that, from our podcasting. But yeah, myself and my colleague Jonathan for do that podcast, the Nordic Football Podcast.
Fantastic. Yeah, we'll get that all tagged in for anyone who's keen to expand their knowledge past the sort of the North American stuff we usually focus on. And the reason we're doing this is like quite a number of players have come across from the leagues that you cover on the Nordic podcast into MLS, and just have a little breakdown of some of them who have arrived to work goalkeeper up the pitch, and start with Jeff Gall, who's signed by the Chicago Fire, a goalkeeper from, and I hope I pronounced this one right, Degerfors.
Very well.
How's
Yeah, you've got it. Degerfors. Yeah.
excellent. So Chicago Fire have lost Gaga Slanina, the big signing by the big departure signed by Chelsea, the 18-year-old goalkeeper. They have another 18-year-old Chris Brady, highly rated backup behind him, who looks like he could be fighting for minutes. What could you tell us a bit about Jeff Gall and what we should expect? Should he be coming in looking to be a starter? Is he a reliable backup, or what kind of goalkeeper is he?
Well, he's never really been a starter in any of his in his entire life. He did start the last 10 games of the season for Degerfors in the Allsvenskan, the top tier
Yeah.
of Swedish football last season. The last 2 years, he's been involved at a club which have been battling against relegation, and they've only just survived by the skin of their teeth on
Right.
a couple of occasions. But they did have a really good run at the end of that last season. I think they were unbeaten in about 12 games, of which he was part of that. And now the thing with Jeffrey Gall here, it could just be he did have a good run of form, to be fair to him, and this kind of move surprised me a bit. Really, he doesn't. To be honest, he doesn't strike to me as an MLS starting caliber goalkeeper.
Right.
Now he might prove me wrong here because I mean, Chicago Fire. I'm not how good is Chicago Fire. They're not one of the better teams in MLS, are they? From
No,
what I
there was
know.
definitely rebuilding. That rebuild's taken quite a while. It seems they fell a bit short. They've got a new manager, Nesra Hendrickson. There's been signs of some things trying to improve. They brought in Xherdan Shaqiri on huge money, but they just things haven't quite worked out for them last season. But they'll go in try aiming to reach the playoffs again next year. But definitely not one of the favorites.
I think he'll be back in Sweden within a year, in my opinion. I've seen this sort of
Yeah.
move before. He'll be back on a bench somewhere at an Allsvenskan club probably next year. I don't. I mean, the way I would see it is, you ask if he's going to be a starter. I think it's whoever else he's in competition with. They're fighting for minutes, and I would personally be surprised if he gets the job, but he might prove me wrong.
Okay, so this could be a big year for Chris Brady, then the young goalkeeper
He'd be a good backup.
stepping
He'd be
up
a good
again.
backup though.
Mm.
Good
Okay,
steady pair of hands.
yeah,
Definitely a good steady pair of hands. A bit of experience. So it'd be nothing wrong with him as a backup goalkeeper who could step in if needed. So
Sure.
it's not a bad signing by any means. But I've seen this sort of move before, and yeah, if he wants, this sort of player sometimes they're not that bothered if they're not starting either.
Yeah.
So like personally, it might be just a good move for him financially, I suppose, as well.
Yeah, bit of an personal experience as well, isn't it? Okay, let's move across Minnesota to Minnesota. They've signed Swedish centre back Mikael Marquez from Eskilstuna. They've they themselves had a lot of difficulties losing Dibasi, their main central defender last year. He suffered an injury late on in the season, and they weren't able to recover. They went out in the playoffs in the first round. Defensively, they just weren't the same. They've brought in Doniel Henry, Canadian international, with plenty of experience, but himself a big sort of injury past, which makes it very difficult to rely on him going forward. Mikael Marquez, is he someone who's, can you tell us a little bit about his experiences as a young player?
Well, he's an interesting player. I think the rumored fee is €250,000, I do believe, which is quite a good sum of money for a side, AFC Eskilstuna, who are from the second tier of Swedish football. So this guy Marquez has never played beyond the second tier in Sweden. So that's a risk in itself. He's only 21 years old though, so you could see. I think what they're doing here, they're kind of hoping that they've got a young gem who can develop. And one thing I do know about him, Mike, is that he can play anywhere on the back line.
Okay.
So this is a player who can play centre back, left back, or right back.
Right.
And I'm guessing also he could probably play a left wing back or right wing back role, whatever system that they've got. So he's a very versatile player, predominantly right footed.
Okay.
So I think probably he will, if it's a back four, he'll play on the right hand side of the centre back pairing, or if it's a back three, probably the right hand side of a back three. Sure. I don't know what Minnesota system's going to be. So I think he's one of these players who might have a potential upside. And I know a few clubs in Sweden were sniffing.
Right.
So
okay.
Minnesota might have got themselves. He could be nothing, but he could be brilliant.
Right. Okay. Yeah, it's interesting because Devasi's, we've got reports that he's not going to be back really training until May. Speaking, I did another podcast recently with someone, Jeremy Rushing, looking into Minnesota, saying that we need a new starting centre back. So if this is another one for the future, it's going to be quite interesting to see what happens with Minnesota going forward in the early stages of the season. But with this expanded format in MLS with the Leagues Cup as well, there's going to be plenty of games. So this could be a way to Marquez maybe being used in this sort of a rotation and trying to ease him in maybe this season as a potential future starter then.
I think I'm quite optimistic about this one. From what I've heard, I think he could become a really good player. Probably this sort of season, give him minutes off the bench, start him in some, I don't know, less important games, build him up, and then maybe sort of start of next season, he's really contending to start regularly. So I think there's plenty of upside with this player. Intriguing transfer, probably of all the transfers that we're going to talk about here. Probably the most, intriguing is a good word.
Definitely, yeah, and I think some of those centre backs as well, they've got a pushing on over plus like 30 plus in Minnesota, so they need to start preparing for sort of the future and the defense there, and especially in the center. So it'd be interesting to see what Marquez can do. Maybe in Leagues Cup, Open Cup as well, and get some of those MLS minutes depending on what's going on if they bring in another starter. Yeah, let's go across down to Austin FC, down to Texas. They lost Ruben Gabrielson. He returned home for family reasons. Really was his reason for leaving. He was gone back to Lillestrøm. He was a key centre back for Austin last year, who went from one of the second worst sides in the Western Conference to the second best from 2021 to 2022. So it was a big year for them, and they've brought in Leo. Oh, this one's got the accents. Leo Väisänen.
Your guess is as good as mine because this is a Finnish player, and
Yeah.
their accents and pronunciations are very difficult. But yeah, it's something along those lines. We'll call him Leo, shall we, for the
I
sake
think,
of this
yeah,
pod?
let's stick with Leo. He's arrived from Elfsborg, who like a signing like this looks like he's a like for like replacement for Gabrielson, as someone who they'll be expecting to start. Is this something you would expect from him as well?
Yeah, definitely. He'd be
Yeah,
starting at MLS level for sure. He's Finnish international, nearly 25 Finnish caps, which is quite
yeah.
impressive. Finland are not the greatest of teams internationally, but they're not bad. They're
Mm.
not bad either. They qualified for the last Euros tournament, and they're no mugs these days at all. So if he's getting in that team, then fair play. Yeah, predominantly a centre back. He could fill in at left or right back if he had to do that. So he's a good age, 25 years old, and he's been the main starter for Elfsborg in the back for the last 3 years.
Okay.
So he's developed and that Elfsborg team's been doing well in the last couple of years as well. So it's not like he's been in a team struggling. He's been a part of a team that's been improving a lot, and I think he's a very solid centre back option here for Austin, and he's the sort of player who I would expect would adapt to MLS level quite easily.
It's interesting. Is he what's he sort of like in possession as well as a player? Austin will be looking to try to build on their season last year and start to try and become one of these sort of big players in MLS, especially in their conference. Is he someone who can control the game in possession as well as be quite? Is he composed on the ball and his positional sense out of possession as well?
Well, they would hope so, wouldn't they?
Mm.
They paid nearly €2 million for him,
Yeah.
so that's quite a big price, really. Elfsborg will be very pleased with the fee they've got there. The Elfsborg system, the way the centre backs work there is that they often were encouraged for direct long ball passing.
Okay.
Think about ball playing defenders, and so I don't know if they've got a more short passing possession style at Austin, or they're looking for quick counter attacks. But he might have to adapt a little bit from a tactical perspective, but he's got a good passing range. So
Mm.
I think technically he's fine. But he's quite a tall centre back as well. So I'd call him quite a tall technical defender. Really, I think he'll adapt quite well.
Be good. Yeah, I think they're usually playing sort of like a 4-2-3-1. They've got Driussi, their big sort of number 10 second striker who's very creative and gets around, but they've got some pace out on the wings that they like to sort of make the most of, and their fullbacks get forward as well. So someone who can switch the play from side to
Yeah,
side and get the
he
ball
can do
going
that.
would be very useful for them. Definitely something to for Austin fans to keep an eye out on. It'd be interesting to see how he settles. Someone come across from Hammarby. He's gone to DC United. Mohamed Jayeze, I believe an Iraqi defender, has come across from Hammarby. DC were terrible. Let's face it, in 2022. They brought in Wayne Rooney as head coach. He's going through a sort of an off season of massive turnaround. There's going to be a lot of changes to this side. They've definitely brought up the age for some of these positions as well. What can you tell us about Jayezi I believe is a sort of an attacking left back?
Yeah, Mohamed Gize. I think it's a brilliant signing.
Yeah,
I mean, you just say DC United were terrible. I mean, unless they've signed some really good players as well. There's a candidate. He might already be their best player.
right.
Might. I mean, one thing I'll tell you about Gize, he actually had a mid-season holdout in 2022
Okay.
for about a month. He was strongly linked with moves away. Celtic in Scotland were a team that were often mentioned here, but there were other teams as well. It looked like he was going to leave, but Hammarby just couldn't do deals. They wanted more money for him, and he got to a stage where he was holding out
Right.
in training. And usually when that happens, it's the end of a relationship, isn't it, between a player
Yeah.
and that you never see him again. But somehow they managed to get him back playing and firing.
Okay.
And I mean, they've got a good manager, Hammer. They've got a really good manager. So obviously the man management skills proved excellent there. But what he is, he's a fantastic attacking left back. He can play left wing back, left midfield, or even left winger. So this is a guy, 8 assists last season, 7 assists the season before. He popped up with 3 goals last year as well. I think he could become a real assist machine for them on that left-hand side. He gets forward regularly. So I think MLS is going to suit him perfectly, right?
Yeah.
Because defenses are not very good overall, are they, in MLS? So he can, he's quite capable of getting forward, but also tracking back well enough to sort out any problems at the back. But I think DC are going to get plenty of an offensive output out of him. And they're getting quite a determined character, as you might imagine.
Okay, yeah, they'll be needing the mental side of the game. They suffered a lot of big defeats last year, a few 6-0 defeats, and they're sort of in that region. So they're needing a whole sort of culture change of finding players to lift them. But at the other end of the pitch, they've got Christian Benteke has come in as their centre forward. So this could be music to his ears, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, Jesus is a good crosser of the ball, so he's going to get that ball in the box, and quite a conventional winger actually. So he'll get the ball, get it on his head, knock it in. But he's a very good technical player. He's got a good athletic system to him. I think it's a fantastic signing. €800,000 in the summer. He was linked for moves away for probably 2 million or more. So I think Hammarby are kind of cutting their losses here. He probably had only 1 year left on his contract, I do believe. So they've done okay. But I think it's a great move. He feels like the sort of player that's probably better than MLS overall, and wouldn't have been out of place at, say, a decent Belgian club or a Dutch club. Celtic in Scotland, obviously. I know Celtic divide opinion how good is Scottish football, etc.
Yeah.
It's still a big club, still
often the Champions League side usually.
So that's the sort of level he's capable of playing at, or teams we're looking at. Suddenly DC United looks like a
looks like a big win.
I think it's a great signing. He will go well for them because he's not just going to go there for the payday either. He'll want to get the performances in.
Excellent. Yeah, I think there's going to be so much to find out about DC United in the early stages of this season with the changes and everything going on around the club. So it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, they need, like you say, they need someone who's going to try it, who's going to be committed and is going to be working hard. And that's what Rooney will be asking from his players. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. They were the bottom side last year. I don't think we're expecting them to go to suddenly rise high up the conference, but they'll be looking to make some improvements. And yeah, a player like this then sounds like a really good signing. A conference rival of theirs, Inter Miami, have also signed Nicholas Stefanelli from AIK. Is he, I believe, sort of a striker in the Swedish league, or is he plays more withdrawn?
Yeah, Nicholas Stefanelli, Argentinian attacker, let's call him. He can play anywhere in the final third, really. You wouldn't call him a traditional number 9. I think often the role shadow striker is used these days, isn't it? For those who play like Football Manager and stuff.
Exactly.
Almost false 9-esque as well. I think Stefanelli, he's not very tall. But he's very physical. He's pressing forward, I think is probably a good way of describing him as well. This is a guy who's coming from AIK, one of the big Stockholm teams, and I've actually had him. They do a fantasy competition up in Allsvenskan. I've been in the fantasy the last couple of years. I've done pretty well actually. I really enjoy the Allsvenskan fantasy. I have a few different scoring rules. Anyway, at various times I've had Stefanelli in my team, and he can be frustrating because you feel like he should be scoring more goals.
Okay.
But then I look back at his record, and 9 goals last year from 29 appearances, 12 goals the season before, 8 assists thrown across 2 seasons as well. It's not too bad, actually, is it? It's okay. And yet, whenever I've watched him play, I always feel he should score more goals. Okay. I'm not saying he misses chances necessarily. It's just like he seems to get in good positions, and then he's always kind of looking to complicate it a bit. Pass to someone else or score the perfect goal, or you just feel like there's another 5 or 6 goals in him.
Yeah.
The rest of the season. So look, the big strength of him is physicality. He's going to get in the faces of defenders, press hard, press the goalkeepers, and he's not a selfish player, which is
Okay.
that can be good and bad, can't it? Sometimes I wish he was more selfish.
Yeah, yeah, that's the
Um,
issue with the strike. Like, when you're in there getting in that final third, sometimes you want them to, have a player who's like the sole focus is right goal now.
I think that's why it didn't always work out at AIK, because
Okay.
AIK have needed a really top scorer, someone who can get them 15, 20 goals a season.
Mm.
So I feel like at times their system hasn't suited him. I think he'd be better in a front two. I've no
Okay.
idea what Inter Miami are going to play, but I think he'd be brilliant alongside a proper number 9, like a poacher.
Right. So
Um,
that's kind of what they've got. So the background on them is they've got Leo Campana, Ecuadorian striker, number 9. He came in and did really well, taking over from Higuain earlier in the season last year, when they had some Phil Neville, the manager of Inter, he was trying to get him more focused, get him back on side. But Leo Campana did really well, and they've also just signed Joseph Martinez, from Atlanta United, another in the box goal scorer. He's one of an Atlanta United legend, in MLS as well. He's one of a top quality striker who's just coming back from some injuries, and a very difficult end to his Atlanta career with issues off with the back office staff and things like that. So they've got these two focal strikers, and they've recently played a preseason friendly with 2 up front, with one player just behind, Corentin Jean, who cover French football. I'm sure you're aware of from
yeah.
Lens. He's only played a little bit, because of injury, unfortunately, when he came in halfway through last season. So it looks like they've got these. They want to play with 2 up front, possibly, and their strikers are very much in the box, sort of
It
killer
makes
instinct
sense,
strikers.
doesn't it? To play, it sounds like they're going to be looking with 2 up front. The other option with Stefanelli is to play him on the left wing, but he'd be cutting inside. A right-footed player. I suppose you could play him right wing if you wanted. He can, again, he's versatile enough that he can probably fill in quite a few holes. And Martinez, I remember him when he first came on the MLS scene, he was literally unplayable.
Yeah,
And then he got an injury, didn't he, that took him
yeah.
out for nearly the whole season. I don't think he's quite ever been the same since.
No, his return was sort of mixed with issues with the back office. There was a little bit of other issues off the pitch, as well as trying to rebuild his sort of fitness and his match sharpness. And with those sort of injuries, it's the confidence as well. His very physical style and physical nature can be quite hard to really get straight back to after such a long period out, you'd think.
Yeah, I think he'll go well, Stefanelli. I think he'll score goals in MLS. I just worry if it is going to be one up front, then he's going to be sort of bit part and sometimes on the bench. But look, they're paying nearly €1 million for him, so surely they're going to bring him to be playing a lot of minutes, I think. So yeah, 2 up front makes a lot of sense for Inter Miami. And look, you're never going to question his commitment and work rate. And I guess sometimes
Yeah.
you might need that. Maybe that's the sort of player they want. He might frustrate fans at times though, or you're thinking, just shoot, man,
Yeah.
rather than doing this, or you feel like he should get more goals. But I feel at MLS level he'll get more chances anyway.
And do you think he could probably play in that sort of number 10 role, the sort of in between the strikers and the midfield? They've got Rodolfo Pizarro as like a designated player who's come back from loans, who doesn't quite fit that role. He was brought in to do that. It doesn't quite work too well. They had Alejandro Pozuelo, who's a creative player behind the strikers, last season, who they haven't brought back as of yet. So do you think Stefanelli can maybe fill that role as playing behind 2 strikers and being sort of a creative force that way?
Possibly, yeah. I think he'd be better behind one striker.
Okay.
Because I don't think he's ever going to be a natural 10.
Sure.
But at the same, I think he's definitely in between a 9 and a 10. If you want to use American terms like that. So like I say, this sort of shadow striker, false 9 area sort of role, pressing forward. But he could develop into a 10. Yeah, he's got enough ability on the ball. With a bit more training. If he played there regularly, then why not?
Yeah. Okay. It's interesting to see what they'll get for him. On the pitch, Miami need to lost one of their centre backs, so they'll be paying sort of more attention to that end of the pitch now. It seems that their forward line is settled. These are the players they will be going with. So it'll be interesting to see what formation they end up using, what sort of systems they use come to the start of the season. Let's finish on one of the big signings. Portland Timbers haven't exactly brought in many players, but the big one they have brought in is Evander from Midtjylland in Denmark. Have I pronounced that correctly? I always get this one mixed up.
Midtjylland,
yeah.
That's it.
A huge signing for them. A new creative player behind the strikers. What can we expect from this? This sort of position in MLS is huge. Like the designated player, the creative force behind the striker. Like all the best teams seem to have this one player who could fit in almost every team across the league. Is this what they're getting with Evander?
Well, Danish football is not my area, but we used to have someone who come on the podcast. He's got his own podcast now, actually. Someone called Henry on Twitter at Football in DK, an account very much worth following if you are interested in anything Danish football related. And so I have talked about several players before in Denmark, including Evander. And I do know that this player was in Henry's team of the year for the last 2 years.
Right.
And I remember we actually did, I think, a guest show about a year ago, and he expected Evander to leave last January. And, we're talking fees of 20 million or something back then. Far too good for Danish Superliga. And a host of big teams were linked with Evander. Now, I've noticed that the Timbers have got him for about 10 million euros here, which that looks cheap. Like this, there's a case, this Evander's, look, for me, he's far too good for MLS from what I know of this player. This Brazilian player, he could become one of the best players in the entire division of all the designated players. A brilliant midfielder. Brazilian, yet to be capped at senior level, but I mean, he was at the under-17 level. He was heralded as one of the next big things in Brazilian football. He hasn't quite developed that way, but he's still been brilliant. And I was shocked that he's gone to MLS because I feel like someone in his prime now, 24 years old, would be coveted by some of the bigger teams in Europe.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he's arrived and sort of conducted his interviews and said he's keen, like he's seen this as a place to develop even further, and it's not so much that it's obviously things. It's not that he's come away from Denmark where things haven't worked. He's seeing it as the next step in his career, and maybe it fits around the players he's playing with. He's got some attacking wingers with a lot of pace around him. Is he a player that's just who's going to get on the ball and create things out of nothing? Is he a player who's going to drive at the defense? What's his key attributes really that's make him stand out?
In terms of a role, I would class him as a good old-fashioned box-to-box midfielder. Really, he does a bit of absolutely everything.
Right.
So you look at his goal scoring record, it's pretty damn good. From central midfield, he scored a lot of goals down, 33 goals and 28 assists from 103 appearances in central midfield. Also has played in attacking midfield with decent numbers as well. So he's more on the attacking side than defensive side, but he does a bit of everything really. I think you can just sit him in the middle of the park and he is, dictate the tempo. He'll pass the ball brilliantly, get you a goal, get you an assist. I think he's absolutely top class player, and he should dominate MLS in the middle of the park. And I think a lot of the designated players in this league are often strikers, right, or wingers,
strikers, like those number 10s, and
you rarely would ever see like a designated player in defence, would you, or goalkeeper, or really that many midfielders. I suppose there's more of them, but compared to the talent around him in the league, like I say, they're going to be able to boss most of the midfielders in the league with him around.
Right. They missed out on playoffs last year. They got a good history in MLS, but they missed out on the playoffs. They're just a little bit short. So I think this is like one of those big signings now for them to say, right, let's get back to where we want to be then, and to be like a dominant side in MLS with especially going forward then.
I think it's a brilliant signing, a statement signing for them. like I say, I'm surprised he's gone over there to MLS. I feel like he could have had his pick of quite a few clubs in Europe. Again, Belgium or Holland. But really, I think the sky is the limit for Evander. He might have just lingered in Denmark too long.
Okay.
I get why he was saying with those comments. I think he might probably feel he should have gone last January, certainly in the summer. I was shocked that they held on to him in the summer of 2020. And eventually, moves come out. Sometimes these players just do linger around too long. So, yeah, I'm expecting him to fully light up MLS really, really well, Mike. And the Timbers have got themselves a brilliant designated player here. They wrap him in cotton wool. Don't let this guy go down, because he's a game changer.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah, looking forward to seeing these players as they come through, and as the season starts. We've got about a month now until the first games. What is it about these leagues that's is been such a popular destination really for MLS clubs to be scouting? What is about these leagues that make them maybe fit much quicker into an MLS style? We've had some players come from, say, for example, South America, where they've got such transitional matches. In Colombia, for example, Santiago Moreno of Portland Timbers said it took him a little while to get used to it. We had so much transition in our games, whereas MLS is not quite as much, but quite tactical and physical as well. Is that what these players are prepared for already then?
Yeah, also you got to remember that most players that come over from any of the Scandinavian countries can speak English. It's their second language.
Yeah.
So that helps in itself. Simple fact, though, Mike, is there's a lot of talent in Scandinavia. Denmark, at the minute, there's a lot of talent leaving that league. Like Sheldrup to Benfica have raided half of Denmark alone. The Norwegian league is really improving as well. If I'd have the Norwegian league, arguably is stronger than the Swedish. But yeah, the simple fact is that it's why are more scouts going over there, because the youth academies are improving a lot more. There's been more investment in them in the last sort of 5-10 years, and now it's starting to bear fruits for these clubs. And it's some of these teams have done a lot better in Europe as well, so they've been able to attract the attention more Europe-wide, nationwide, worldwide. And when there's more talent, there's going to be interest, isn't there? So I think what MLS can offer as well, he can offer a better financial package.
Yeah,
for some of these players, the money isn't quite there, for, in certain areas. So they can go there, and obviously, I say I'm surprised by two or three of these players were interested in going to MLS at this stage of the season. So it kind of shows that the MLS is maybe received a lot better now, and certainly financially it can get them going.
Yeah, it's definitely been showing improvements year on year. I personally feel it's a lot more competitive, and we've had our first CONCACAF Champions League winner with the Seattle Sounders last year, defeating it's usually dominated by Liga MX in Mexico. So now it's really starting to show some improvements. That'd be really exciting to see. Thank you so much for joining me, Peter, and going through and giving us all a bit more of an idea of these players. Remind everyone where they can follow you and the Nordic podcast online, just for anyone who wants to be a little bit more up to date.
Well, thank you very much, Mike. It's been a pleasure to be on. And you can follow me on Twitter myself at Meatman Soccer, and also follow the podcast, Nordic Football Podcast, at Nordic Foot Pod, if you want to hear some more from me.
Brilliant. Thanks very much for your time, Peter. Really appreciate it.
No problem, Mike. Take care.
Excellent. Brilliant.